couple scheduled for our next meeting, and some vacancies clearly. Is there anything that anyone would like to review on the regular agenda? All right, how about updates? We'll start at that end if we don't mind.
Oh, well, last night I had green space and plan. And plan, you'll see in a little bit. So plan was the update from the Lakota group, which was great and really well received and lots of good, insightful questions from the Plan Commission. Green space is good. They're working on their plans and budget for the upcoming year. So lots of discussion around that and kind of their goals and priorities. So I think we talked about Green Our City. I think we're maybe on the same page on that. So that's good. So yeah, I thought they were two good meetings.
Good. Emerson.
Oh, no updates, Mayor.
Let's see, Thursday I attended the BDC and Chamber of Commerce happy hour. It was held by one of our newest BDC members, who's the owner and operator of Cyrano's.
Yeah.
And so they had a really good attendance. I'd say there were about 50 people there. And what was great about it is it's a mixture of Business Development Commission and the Chamber of Commerce, and there were representatives from the other business districts as well. So I think what is happening is that the Business Development Commission is achieving their goal of bringing everybody together for communication and events, and hopefully more will come of that. And then I also met with the Sustainability Subcommittee on the annual report, and they've got a lot organized, and we'll be discussing that in our next meeting, which is on Monday.
Okay, great. I'm going to go to Jamie, David, just to give you a second to settle in.
Thanks. Yes. The BDC had a happy hour with the chamber. That was great. And thanks to all who were able to attend that. They are currently trying to figure out the next coffee. Those details to be determined. They have been sending out a great newsletter. It's jammed with information. And one of the things that that is in the newsletter and is on our social media is the 14 days of local finds and Valentine vibes in Webster Groves. Tiara's doing a fabulous job with that. It's super fun to see what business or restaurant is next. And business licenses renewals have gone out. And then I attended the SS4A meeting, and that effort is moving right along, and it's very thoughtful. So I appreciate the process.
David?
The Arts Commission met this morning. They're doing a lot of things. First, at our council meeting on February 18th, they're going to do the Lifetime Achievement Award. And PM, remind me, I need to talk to you about that. And then they are also, they have money from Mike Silverstein Silverman, thank you, to update the banners throughout Webster Groves, the City of the Arts that you've seen before. And so Neil, I'm going to need your assistance, or they're going to need your assistance to come up with like an agreement with Mike and how we get that all accomplished. And then they are also, so my understanding is that, do we have a 501c3 for the Webster Groves Public Art Fund? It seems like we did in the past.
You want to do this, or you want me to do this?
The short answer is no.
So what were we doing with them? Well, never mind. I don't want to have that discussion.
You don't want to have that discussion.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to talk to you.
I guess the question is, so they want to, collect money, or at least have the opportunity to collect money and have it charitable. And my thought is maybe through Webster Arts would be the more advantageous process. Have you had discussions? Why
don't you and I talk, and I'll bring you up to speed.
All right. And then the Jerry Park renaming of the sculpture park, they're in the process of redoing the design, like adding things and everything with some money that they have. And hopefully that will be finalized by this summer, and then we'll have a dedication ceremony sometime this summer.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Anything from the clerk? All right, Mr. City Attorney.
I'd like to tell you I have an update, Mayor, but I don't.
It's okay. Dr. Peoples.
No, ma'am.
Wow, we're just rolling along here. I thought Karen was gonna get a minute here, but I'll do mine. We did, Emily and I and city attorney and the city manager, met with George Stock representing KBC and Children's Hospital and a group of 10 neighbors probably, about some of their concerns. I think it was a good meeting. Mr. Stock was very receptive to what people had to say, so I very much appreciated that. There are a couple of things that I wanted to just run by council here. There are a couple items of concern that Public Works could look at immediately. One is line of sight from Bacon Avenue when you're trying to turn onto Rock Hill. Parking is a problem sometimes when people park too close to the intersection. And then also their request was to restrict school buses on College Avenue.
College or home?
College, they'd have to go on to Home.
Okay.
And so I was simply seeing if council was willing to let Public Works go ahead and take a look at those two things rather than sending them directly to the TAC. One thing that I will help the neighbors with is they also want some parking restrictions, and I think that probably should still go through the TAC, given that we are in the middle of a parking restriction policy. So, but are you all okay with the other two smaller items?
I asked this question earlier. When
Yeah.
you say buses, you mean?
School.
School
School
buses,
buses.
but yes, but Councilmember Smith brought to my attention something that's very important, and that is that part of this is we have to figure out whether the school district sends any buses around there, and if they do, would that interfere with any restriction interfere with their ability to pick up kids for school? So that would have to be part of it.
They're trying to get the kids as close as they can to their home.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
The way it's probably.
Yeah.
counterproductive.
And then I went to the BDC, don't need to mention that. All right, Karen, do you have any updates? All right, there we go. Okay, then we're gonna move right to the main event. We are happy to have with us, and they, as Emily said, warmed up last night with the Plan Commission, but our leadership of Lakota Group, come on, who's doing this and how we're doing this? Okay. Yes. He's not here.
Well, we do have a new partner.
Thank you, we do. Who is a returning employee to Webster Groves. All right, thank you for the reminder, though. That's excellent. All right, hi, welcome. This is
Hi.
exciting. We're getting there.
I am Josh Bloom. I think
Sorry, I left out the important part. there,
that's okay,
Josh.
from the Lakota Group with my colleague Hannah Bader. And we are so happy to be here. Thank you, Mayor Arnold and council members. We had our warm up, as you said, last night with the Planning Commission, and we are going to do an abbreviated version of that to keep within our allotted 15-minute presentation and then 15 minutes for Q&A. And I hope it will do justice to all of the material that's here.
So I'm going to tell you what I'm not supposed to tell you, and we were really fast in our updates.
Yeah,
So you actually have 20 minutes for both.
well, okay. Go crazy. All right. I think you all received our memo. I'm putting it in air quotes because most memos are not 45 pages or so. And we're just going to cover highlights from that tonight, but we'll start just with a reminder of where let me see. I think this is supposed to work, but maybe it doesn't. Let's see. There we go. Okay. Come on. Pardon? No, it's good. I just have to find motor control on the mouse wheel. So we're going to review goals and strategies. We will have some discussion after, as I said, and we will look at some of the opportunity sites that we have developed concepts for. I think you all know that we've worked in 3 phases on this, and we are currently at the end of phase 2. Which is the envisioning phase, and then we will move on to writing the comprehensive plan really immediately after we get any outstanding feedback from you guys, the Planning Commission, Steering Committee. Can you advance? There we go. All right. In the first phase, we did a ton of engagement, as you can see here, from focus groups to online surveys to workshops and pop-up events. And in total, we talked to hundreds and hundreds of Webster Groves residents. We were really thrilled with that participation and the input that we got. There we go. And in that engagement, we collected just ideas and words that people hold in their minds that they associate with Webster Groves and what they love about Webster Groves. And these are some of those, and they will be incorporated into the vision that is part of the comprehensive plan. Sorry, I can't seem to make this. Oh, where? On the right. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, we may use the whole 20 minutes as it turns out, just organizing it, getting through the slide. Okay. So what you saw in the memo is that the plan is what you saw in the memo are draft goals and strategies. They are organized in a framework that builds from community pillars to goals, which are broad sort of beacons, to strategies, which are measurable things to achieve, to recommended actions or potential actions. And the framework for that is based on 7 pillars, and we'll spend just a couple of minutes on each of these pillars. Here's where we probably will not do justice to the amount of material that's in the document you looked at. The first of the 7 pillars is resilient neighborhoods. And I should say the pillars are not in order of priority. They are just the pillars. And so they are in the order they're in. We can change the order, but resilient neighborhoods, again, what you're looking at are goals and then strategies, and then what's not here are the potential actions or tactics, of which there are half dozen or more under each of these strategies. So the first goal has to do with diversifying housing options and creating housing options that can serve as broad the breadth of needs that people have with regard to housing, from larger families to downsizers to retiring couples and so on, and trying to create more types of housing product within Webster Groves. Second goal has to do with attainable housing, something we heard a lot about. What is attainable housing? It doesn't mean that you can cover every single price point within the housing of Webster Groves, but it does mean maintaining the accessible housing or attainable housing that exists already, particularly in North and South Webster, and allowing or maintaining that diversity of housing types and sizes so that it is accessible to a relatively broad range of residents and potential residents. And the third goal is about retaining Webster Groves' distinctive character, which is something people talked a lot about, including not just preserving what's here, but making sure that new construction is of high quality design, doesn't necessarily need to look like the historic homes, but it should reflect a quality of architecture that is visible throughout the city. The second pillar is economic vitality. And the first goal and strategies talk about the traditional business districts, which are really a prize of the city. They are unusual. They're unusually vibrant. I don't know if you realize how lucky you are to have these districts. And the strategies have to do with managing those districts and diversifying the uses within those districts. So continuing to encourage and invest in small and independent businesses in those districts, but also expanding the uses in the districts to a mix of uses and mixed use development. that can allow for housing to be developed in those districts, and a little more density in the commercial districts. Second goal has to do with retail mixed-use development along key corridors. These are particularly corridors that aren't necessarily in the historic commercial districts, and allowing for, again, the development of different housing products and creating more retail opportunities within the city. And the third goal has to do with strengthening the economy and tax base overall, including growing commercial and retail uses as in the previous goals, and the light industrial uses that exist in the city, in the places they already exist, and developing for sale and rental multifamily housing within the best places to develop that. Sure. Oh, thank you. I always forget. Excuse my sniffle here. The hearts are from the community workshop that we did, where we presented these as draft, and the same community workshop was also created as an online survey, and people could rank or score each of the goals and strategies according to their likes or dislikes. And so that's what that reflects. All right. And the last pillar that I will do before turning it over to Hannah is City of the Arts. We heard a lot about City of the Arts, the importance of that identity, and we broadened that concept to thinking about creativity as a creative economy, and how that's reflected in creative businesses, which can be businesses directly related to the arts, like galleries, but they can be businesses that are creative endeavors of all different kinds, from architects to marketing firms, graphic design, and so on, and to support creative businesses throughout the city. Second is supporting and expanding creativity in public spaces. There is a lot that already exists in Webster Groves in public spaces, particularly in sculpture, but that can be extended through temporary exhibitions, or temporary installations, to other things that sort of make creativity something visible on the streets. The third goal is preservation and quality of new architecture. I mentioned that in the previous goal, and what you'll see, I'll point out, is that there are connections of goals and strategies among these pillars, and that's deliberate because they reinforce each other, right? And we will make that explicit in the plan itself. And the fourth is creative public events, of which there are many that exist already, but thinking and assessing the events calendar so that it kind of underscores and builds that City of the Arts character that you want to develop and maintain and develop further. I am going to turn it over to Hannah. Good luck with the mouse.
With mouse, okay. See if I can figure it out. Do you have any tips before we start? It was right
Yeah,
here.
yeah, it looks like you're right on it there.
There we go. I did follow along. So talking about pillar 4, this is quality of life. So this is really looking at our parks and green spaces. So the first goal is looking at how we can ensure that all residents have access to these parks and green space within walking distance of their home. This is already something that does occur in Webster Groves and something you should be proud of, and so is the community. So this is just looking at ways we can continue to expand that green space and work on connecting those together so that people are able to walk from homes in between those assets. Goal number 2 is really looking at how we can foster social inclusion and community connection within those public spaces. We heard a lot about how people like to be in the parks and green spaces and how we can continue to make those inclusive places where we can gather. And the last goal is looking at how we can preserve green space and natural areas, working towards sustainability, whether that's through educational efforts, bringing in more stormwater management and wildlife habitats, and growing our urban tree canopy.
Yeah. What's your definition of comfortable walking distance?
That is a quarter mile radius to a half a mile radius from the parks.
Thank you.
Yes. And when we did the level of service analysis for the community, there's minimal places that actually have gaps in that. So most people can walk to parks within this community. Operational excellence. This is a big one. This is really including our services that we offer to the community and how we can strengthen those. So the first goal is looking at how we can form regional partnerships to improve our access to services and amenities. Looking at how we can collaborate with neighboring municipalities as well as the county, and looking at different ways we can create task force between those amenities. The second one is really looking at investing in city services, continuing to attract and retain higher quality staff, and having modernized and renovated facilities to ensure that we're providing the most efficient and high quality services to the residents. Goal 3 is really looking at communication, so how we can evaluate and communicate emerging trends with the community and residents and businesses. And this last goal is looking at how we can streamline the public review and entitlement process to make smooth transitions within our services. Pillar number 3 is looking at complete streets for all. This one is pretty dense in strategies. This one covers everything from goal 1, looking at our streets from a driving perspective, so making them a little bit safer. And goal 2 and 3 really encompass how we can improve and expand our bicycle and pedestrian network. This is a lot about safety. We'll have a map that's included with this that kind of outlines some ideas of where we can continue to expand those services. And this also looks at and recognizes that we need to partner with our surrounding communities to make sure that we're making an integrated system with the larger network of communities around us. And then the last goal is our essential systems. And this is really diving into utilities and infrastructure, stormwater management, and conservation and sustainability practices. This one acknowledges that most of our utilities are with private companies, but working on forming and collaborating with those entities to continue to provide efficient services. Looking at stormwater management, we heard a lot about our floodplains and how we can mitigate some of the flooding issues. So that's continuing to promote practices that are ensuring that we're providing safe places within the floodplains. And the last one is looking at how we can be a regional leader in sustainability for these areas. So those are our pillars. We're going to quickly go through the opportunity sites, and then we want to save some time for you guys to answer questions, share your thoughts. So let's jump in. So for the opportunity sites, these areas were chosen because they offered strategic value to the community. There has already been developer interest in some of these, and they also showed potential to diversify land use mix within these areas. When we came to the community workshop, we had this exhibit up there, and we asked people to share their thoughts and ideas for what they'd like to see in these spaces, both through qualitative responses as well as visual preference. So they were able to, put sticky dots and tell us what type of character they want to see in these places. So we honed in on 2 of those sites, the Pacific Avenue site, and the second one is the Watson Road corridor site. This is at Elm Avenue and Watson Road. And both of these mixed interest and uses, but what stood the highest was mixed use development. So that's kind of what inspired these opportunity sites that we'll walk through today. And a reminder that these are not final development plans or concepts. These are just ideas of what can happen on these sites. And the intention for them within the comprehensive plan is to be a tool for you all. So they're reflecting what can happen in these sites, and they're to inspire different ideas for development community to come to these sites. So jumping into the first site, this is Pacific Avenue and Gore Avenue. As you all know, there has been development interest in this site before. We heard a lot about it within our conversations with the larger community. And one of the things we recognized was we needed to come together to have a vision and an idea for this site. So quickly, what we're showing here is how we can bring in some of the mixed use development that we want to see along here. and start to establish some development guidelines. So when a proposal comes to you, you have a strong understanding of what the community wants to see and how we can do it with best practices. So really making a strong streetscape, having those buildings front the corridor to create a street wall, pulling parking into the middle, really respecting the floodplains and creating a public amenity along here. And as we had said, mixed use, so looking at retail on the ground floor with residential above. So this first concept here, we did a quick massing study for you all so you could kind of see the comparison of it in relationship to what else is already happening in the district. But this right here is something that could happen today. It's within what's allowed of zoning, 4 stories. It has enough parking for this site, so this is something that could come today. But we also wanted to just show and test what that might feel like if we increased height and density. So this is adding an additional story and showing the impact that would have on the total dwelling units on the site, and how that would also impact parking, which is we can't really get more parking on this site than is. So we might have to flex some of our zoning requirements if height is something we want to add to this. And then we decided to push the bounds as well, and we went all the way to a maximum of showing what 6 stories would look and feel like on this site, and just the impact that that can have along the corridor from a density perspective as well as a character perspective. And before we jump into questions, I'll take you guys through the second site that we have. This one is along Watson Road at the corner of Elm Avenue. This, as you know, is where the Walgreens site is, Big Lots, which is recently vacant. And this, we looked at a couple of different sites along this corridor, but we felt this one was the best one to study, just because of its separation from the existing residential. So we have Old Watson Road right back here. So creating kind of a natural barrier from that allows us to play a little bit more with density on this site, which without having a stronger impact on some of the residential right in the near neighborhood. So this concept is presenting similar development guidelines as the first one, looking at how we can bring mixed use to this intersection, fronting those buildings along the main road. So we're creating that really strong street frontage, kind of incentivizing this new streetscape character to happen along here, and how that can extend along Elm Street and along Old Watson Road where there's not currently streetscape. So really trying to show some of those best practices that should be happening along the corridor. And this was a very unique shaped parcel, so we chose to kind of incorporate some new green space to here, which is an expansion of some of the strategies and recommendations that are in the comprehensive plan. So creating a new green space for the new residents here, as well as the surrounding neighborhoods, and anchoring that with a single-story commercial use as well. So we did the same thing for this one in terms of testing its massing and density. So here you'll see this is 4 stories. This is what can happen within current zoning. You can really see how we're creating this strong anchor at this intersection. We talked a lot about how this is kind of one of the gateways into Webster Grove. So it's nice to see that anchored by a new plaza with some gateway signage, and really trying to start to present what some of that streetscaping character we have in the community is. And then we did the same thing where we pushed the limits and are trying to show what 5 stories might feel like, and then all the way up to 6. So I'll just do a quick wrap up and then we can pause for comments, but I just want to let you know that this isn't the only time we're receiving comments. We want to allow you guys to have open discussion. We can walk through all of this, but we know this was a lot of information. So if there's any additional thoughts, or if you want to spend time with the presentation and share more, you can share those with Dr. People and she'll pass them along to us. But now I'll save it for questions for you guys. So.
I have a quick,
So no, it needs to be quick. We got time.
Yeah, you've got time.
okay, well, I have a few, but I'll just ask one right now.
Yeah.
What would be like the logical next step for the whole comprehensive plan? And I know in the past we had pretty good plan done a long time ago. It
Mhm.
was never adopted.
Adopted. Mhm.
And so what does adoption look like?
Yes. That's a good question. So right now, this is kind of the end of phase 2. So we come to you all with our initial ideas to kind of vet them as we develop it into the comprehensive plan. Next step for us is to turn this into a report. So write it out. So it's expanding a little bit on these with narrative. We're including case studies in here to show you how other communities might have done some of these actions, and really working on our implementation section, which is going to include a matrix that shows timeline, it shows responsibilities, it shows funding. So it's helping you guys actually achieve this plan. And once we have that draft document, it has to go through a review process with the city, our steering committee, and then it'll be taken back to Plan Commission for approval. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Peoples, I don't know if this is the exact adoption, but once approved by Plan Commission, it comes back to you all for final approval. And I imagine somewhere in the middle of that is public comment as well. So that's kind of the next steps if all goes smoothly. So right now, this is just a draft. We're still hearing comments, and we have to actually create the comp plan.
So when it comes to council, that
Mhm.
means we are making it official.
Yes. It is an adopted plan by you all.
Okay.
I'm going to follow up because you mentioned something. You said you're going to sort of hone in on the implementation part.
Mhm.
First of all, thank you. This is really fascinating, and I have lots of specific notes that I will write down and give to
Amazing.
you that way rather than spending time on them. But so my initial reaction was, this is absolutely fantastic.
Mhm.
Let's do it all. And then I thought, okay, staff resources and money.
Mhm.
So there will be a component of our plan that will tell us a little bit about what that might be,
Mhm.
right? Because realistic implementation obviously is going to depend and the timeline for it on both of those things.
Yes, so funding will be a component of it. We'll provide some recommendations. We'll also provide some of the actions could be done by other parties. So we try to find ways where there can be collaboration and partnerships with other organizations. So the idea there is, it doesn't all have to weigh on the city's shoulders. It can also be something that can be brought to life with partnerships. So that'll be a part of the implementation where we're actually outlining those things for you. And the other thing to recognize is it's a 10 to 20-year plan. So some of these things are gonna take a while and are going to cost a lot of money, but over time, there's going to be some quick wins that we can do, and we'll make sure to outline those. So it can be something that you guys can continue to promote, that we are working towards the comp plan. But yes, it's a long-term plan. There are going to be some things that are big ticket money ones.
Other people have questions? I'll go. I mean, I have more too, and I know Dan does, so you better jump in before we start.
We know you've been preparing since last night on these questions.
I did keep my mouth shut last night. It was a good meeting. So on the two kind of development sites, which I like both of them, I think they're
Mhm.
really exciting. When the comp plan is actually written, I'm assuming it'll be written away so that if we wanted to do a project someplace else in the city or someplace else on Watson or something,
Mhm.
that the recommendations in the comp plan would also apply to that and not to only these two specific
Absolutely.
ideas. Okay. And then at what point do we bring in property owners and residents to say,
Mhm.
hey, this is an idea, it's just an idea, but we want to talk to you, like, what's the appropriate kind of timing for that engagement?
Yeah. With these sites, we kind of look to the city to guide us on those. But we have, before a plan is adopted, just kind of presented those to property owners and business owners who might be impacted, just so they have clarity on this not being an actual site concept, but it's an idea and something that's going to help us. That's a tool for the city. So usually it's important to show that before it's adopted, just so that it's, you have a full circle of support behind a vision for this. So we can kind of work collaboratively on and see the best approach to talk to business and property owners.
That sounds good. And then since we've been doing the comp plan and even before when we knew we were going to do a comp plan, we put a couple of things kind of on the back burner to wait and see how they'd be addressed in the comp plan. And I don't know that they're necessarily in this presentation. I didn't, but I'm assuming they will be in the final product. So I just thought I'd mention like
Yeah.
zoning in general for that street for along Pacific is kind of a hodgepodge. And there's been talk of, do we need to change that or not? So regardless of kind of whether there's a demonstration project there, do we need to do something with that zoning? ADUs, occupancy permits, and the idea of exploring conservation districts were all things that were kind of like let's look at that with the comp plan. So
Yes.
just wanted to mention those things, but I think, that Watson plan, I like the Pacific one too. The Watson plan is kind of exciting because we have that new streetscape or that new walkway going down, Elm that would tie into that. So that's kind of a
Mhm.
cool tie-in.
Yeah, we can definitely look back at our goals and strategies and as we continue to develop in the comp plan, just to ensure that these are a part of it. But I do know we've mentioned zoning a couple of times throughout there, so that should help encourage and incentivize the need to update that ordinance.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Just had one quick question. So I love the Watson Road. I think we need to do something with Watson Road. How about the other side of Watson Road across from Elm? Did you guys look at that opportunity potentially with the Steak and Shake and everything?
Yeah, so we were looking there. There's a lot of vacancy just past it
Yeah.
as well as you go down there. So that was, we were going back and forth between exploring this site or that site, and we chose this one because that one just abuts directly against residential. But as we were saying before, these same principles can be used across the whole corridor. So we'll ensure that in the plan, it shows that these guidelines should be for all of Watson Road and similar corridors in the community.
Excellent. Did the comprehensive plan look at any annexation of land?
Mhm.
Potentially Webster Grove's taking land, not
We-
taking, but annexing land?
We have not yet. I know we've talked about it a little bit in the beginning, the first phase of the plan, but we haven't explored it yet. Do you
Thank you
have
very
any
much. Oh, I
immediate
mean, right across
ideas?
from there. I know that the
Yeah.
Wishes Pizza, I'm sure that they have gas tanks underneath and that's probably part of the problem there.
Mhm.
But I mean, that whole corridor there, I think with Joe Bacardi's and pizza or Domino's. I don't even know what it was, a Chinese buffet when I was growing up across the street from that.
Mhm.
But I think that whole
That
area
whole
right
strip
there.
on the south
And I
side.
think that's unincorporated St. Louis County. So it's going to be even more difficult to get, I'm sure. But if it by chance was Crestwood and Marlboro or something, then maybe it's an
There's the potential for
opportunity.
that, yeah. We can take a look at that for the land use.
I'd like to ask about, well, first, these are really exciting to consider. And I love that the Watson corridor, thinking about people when it comes to that area, because it's hard to even just like get access the Walgreens on foot. So that's fantastic. And with like keeping in mind of like bikeability and walkability, seeing a lot of parking spots. I know that we have to have parking spots. We are in St. Louis County after all, with not a lot of great public transit, but is there ever consideration to go underground with stuff like this, or is that just ratchet up the cost?
Yeah, it definitely adds to the cost. We do for both of these show on the first floor having some parking as
Okay.
well. So we're accommodating some of it internally. But it's going to be one of those things where it's a cost balance with developers. But I'm sure that's something that we can kind of speak to in the plan of how we can, mask parking, tuck it in.
Yeah.
And see if that's a way we can approach that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't know if it's, when we look, because I like both of the commercial use, I'm just like, we've got to find commercial, retail, other sources of revenue, as well as more density with the apartments and everything. But of course,
Yeah.
What we ran into on Pacific before was, the pushback, the density and all of that. So when I see 4 units, I really like that. When I get to see them 5 and 6, I cringe
Yes.
because, that's putting us right back in the same spot with the same argument
Yes.
that we had before. So I guess my question is, does this consider the feasibility of these types of developments based upon 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot? I know we said we show the differences there, but even if I look around similar municipalities in the area, I rarely see anything unless you're in Clayton. I rarely see anything greater than 4. So
Yeah, so for this, we can kind of talk about how we want to include it in the comp plan. Since we're still in the visioning phase, it was our way of kind of pushing the bounds and seeing what people were going to respond to when we just increase height and increase density. And we heard that a lot last night at Plan Commission as well, that for this site specifically, 4 stories seems appropriate. maybe Watson Road, 5 stories. But
Max.
yes, max, but still it might be pushing the bounds. So it was a little bit more about seeing how we would be responding to character than it was about the realities of this site. So
And I know that the realities that we also have to consider is the financial feasibility
mhm,
of a site, you know, I mean,
Mhm.
before we were being told that anything less than 7 and 8 feet
isn't.
was not financially feasible from a development perspective,
Mhm.
you know, well, that density is not feasible from a
Within the
community
community.
perspective,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
workable. I know it is from a community perspective,
Yeah.
but is that from a development
Mhm.
perspective?
We didn't do an entire market assessment on this site. One of the things we talked about last night is that the topography is pretty intense on this site. So that's probably what led to a lot of the increases in height. So one of the things we're going to go back and explore on this site is to ensure that we've kind of respected that topography and aren't building too much into the slope. So it'll be less of a cost to build something like this. But developers are always going to say they want more residential on a unit. So kind of bringing this in as the community's vision and starting from this is what we want and are comfortable with, I think can be a selling point to developers.
For official microphone. That another way to approach it is that the city can take some control over the development process in a couple of ways. You could issue an RFP that has specificity about what you want to see on the site, and you could reference these concepts. You could also engage a consultant to look at the feasibility before you issue that RFP so that you know that it's buildable and that it's sort of financially feasible, right? And that would sort of be someone working on your side to help you understand the economics of it. As Hannah said, this was more about kind of testing community character and community interest or affinity for this kind of added
Yeah.
density.
And I think kind of to both of your points, that's something we can bring into the implementation is maybe like a quick hit steps of how you might kind of bring this development to the community.
Because a critical issue for us is, as a community, having a reputation
Yeah.
that no builder wants to even be bothered because it's just going to be a waste of their time and money. So knowing that before we even put something out there, we've done what we need to do to make sure that what we want to see is feasible.
Yeah, and that if someone comes to you with if you put out a developer RFP and someone comes to you with a plan that aligns with what you've requested, that you're promising that you are going to make the
Effort to get it approved.
yeah, you're gonna make their life easier
Yeah.
in that approval process, right? And so that should allay some of the concerns that you're referring to from, whatever past experiences have been.
So one of the things that you mentioned that parking would be, I can't remember how you said it, but certainly would impact the size of the
Mhm.
buildings here. And there are a lot of zoning kinds of things that you mentioned in the tactics. Some of them I think are fantastic for us. Some of them I think are going to be really hard for us.
Yes.
But one thing I don't remember seeing, and maybe it's there, is revisiting our parking minimums and what does that look like relative to other communities similar to ours right now?
Mhm.
Are we conservative in our parking minimums, overly so? Are we right on target? I don't know what that looks like, and would seem to inform a lot of what would happen with these
Yeah.
potential development areas.
Yeah, I can't remember specifically if we get into parking.
It's only a 75-page
Minimums?
document. You don't
Yes.
remember every detail?
But that's definitely something we can go back and make sure is a part of this. And is a great point, especially it can be done even within our land use strategy can simply be addressed in there of different areas that we should take a look at our parking requirements.
Yeah, I guess I should call them requirements and not minimum.
One thing I'm seeing is that, we've got individual property owners and these opportunity sites. And how feasible is it to allow several people to develop these sites versus one developer, for example? How do you
Yeah.
navigate that? Or
I-
how do you document for
Yeah.
that?
I think how we've presented these, they would probably be a consolidation of some of those parcels with property owners. And I think the best approach would be one developer to do those, just to get, the full vision to come to fruition for some of these sites. I know that won't be the perfect end all be all for a lot of them because dealing with
that's
different
the
property
ideal,
owners.
but it's,
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
so you think this size parcel here is about the smallest we could go for a new development?
No. Yeah. But with something smaller than this,
Okay.
that we can still kind of
Okay.
test the same principles with.
That's good. I mean, that's-
Yeah.
In some ways, and if that generated interest to develop, sort of one of these buildings, like 3 different people developing,
Mhm.
Right.
there would be potentially some advantages in that they might each have a different but compatible character.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
yeah.
So I'm going to ask you to speak at the microphone just for our recording purposes. I mean, you don't have to repeat yourselves, but I was a little slow on that, so.
The other thing that was interesting to me is how you talked about preservation and new design and how
Mhm.
we can have both. And we don't need to try to replicate the
What's-
past. We
Mhm.
can have authenticity
Authenticity.
without copying things.
Yeah.
So how do you encourage that, incentivize that? I mean, I know you could have design charrettes and things, but it
Mhm.
seems like it's always selling the idea and getting buy-in from the community. How,
Mhm.
do you have any magic ways of doing that?
Josh, do you have any magic ways to do? Yeah.
Yep, please come on
Yeah.
down.
Well, you,
Yeah. Go ahead. You're fine.
just, so one way of thinking about it is in terms of maintaining scale of neighborhoods. And form-based code is a way to do that, right? In terms of the architectural detail, I don't think you want to put yourselves in the position, not you as, I don't think that you want to have a regulatory body in a position of regulating every design detail of new housing, but you can encourage that through design guidelines, pattern books, and that someone who's building in Webster probably has an appreciation for what exists here,
Mhm.
and hopefully will recognize that in.
They don't.
And I guess I was speaking about the commercial areas.
Oh, sorry.
You think of like Columbus, Indiana, is very cool, and they've got some, good variety, and it's a good scale, and so I was just wondering how you encourage that type of design or investigation.
I think that probably goes back to the form-based code would be
Okay.
best for those areas.
And can you explain form-based code? Because is that because one of the things is I go back to, and the first slide where we were looking at residential and trying to have the diverse housing and maintain some of the housing stock. And there's been conversation, and I was trying to pull that up so I could see again around conservation districts and things of that nature. But I have been wanting to even talk about considering the existing stock when we're looking at what's available for new stock. Is that what is form-based code? How does that work?
Form-based code, so traditional zoning is very prescriptive. It regulates use and as well as height and setbacks and
Mhm.
things like that. Form-based code is less concerned with the use and more concerned with, again, maintaining that the volume of the buildings is compatible with
Okay.
with the scale that
Mhm.
of the commercial district or the neighborhood.
Okay.
Would it effectively say, here's all your options, you can select them and we won't care what you select? Is that kind of it?
I think it's just like a little bit more flexible than the zoning requirements. So it's being a little bit more prescriptive about the character of those buildings, and a little less about the uses that are happening behind those walls. And it's kind of functions more of like a design guideline or, in that term of guidance.
Kind of
Did I
like,
cover?
I know, like Seaside, Florida, like where it's like all the houses are similar, like or up in St. Charles.
That's probably more prescriptive.
Prescriptive,
Uh,
yeah.
Yeah, like an example might be, we recently worked in another community where the current zoning is incredibly specific for the commercial district about like, you have to have 3 of these 5 character traits. You have to have display windows that are this high. You have to have a signboard that is this, you know, and the windows have to be this percentage of the facade. And it's, unless, you know, unless you're, I don't know what the example is of like where every single retail operator wants to be, like what those codes are creating are barriers, right? And a form-based code creates more flexibility that in the end provides an outcome that makes it a little easier for the developer, but also results in an outcome that hopefully is one that fits.
That's interesting. Because I'm of the opinion that we've gone too far on the conservative side of our historic preservation and architectural review boards. So like, I would love to see us be a little bit more liberal and allow more different types of construction and different types of homes that people actually want to build, rather than what the city wants them to build.
So tagging on to David's question, is that we should focus on our policies now. I mean, our building codes. To have those in place before we even start thinking about something like this.
It's probably a good next step after the comprehensive plan to revisit zoning, to make it to make it supportive of the comprehensive plan.
And we've woven in some of the strategies and actions that show suggestions of where those changes could happen.
Great.
And hopefully some of that will encourage, with that and the land use strategy, what kind of change we want to see in the districts.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about something. We've talked a lot about housing and some of these areas of opportunity. One of the things under economic vitality that you talked about was grow the city's industrial sector, which seems to some degree a little bit incompatible with some of the other things, in part because I don't know where the land is to do that. Is that just a reimagining of Owen Ridge and I don't even know what to call it on the other side of the railroad tracks that Brentwood, I think Brentwood thinks it's theirs, but it's not.
Yeah, so I think it's recognizing that that is a sector of the
Okay.
economy, and looking at how we can fill some of the vacancies that are happening in there.
Okay.
And just recognizing that that's something that strengthens our tax base. And I mean, we drove through it and it's a beautiful industrial area. And there's different ways that we can bring in more businesses and attract businesses and maybe rethink what some of those businesses are.
Okay.
And
And I'll I think this is maybe adjacent to your question, but there's also the opportunity to broaden our understanding of what is industrial use. And that zoning, to go back to zoning, often restricts any kind of manufacturing in most areas of a city, but of a city like Webster Groves. But there are lots of opportunities for manufacturing to take place in traditional commercial districts, whether it's, you know, someone, a bakery is manufacturing. A tailor is a form of manufacturing. And there are just gazillions of examples of creative entrepreneurs who are doing small scale micro manufacturing in storefronts that activate the commercial district.
Thank you. That actually is really helpful.
Yeah.
in understanding.
I had one more thought I forgot from last night, and that was I really liked on your higher massing examples, how you set back the upper stories to make it look a little less massive.
yeah,
So, you know, a guideline around that or a recommendation around that. And the comprehensive plan, I think would be great. And
Mhm.
another question that seems to come up all the time is when you are on a slope where, and it's 4 stories, where's the
Where
4
that 4
stories
stories
from?
happens. Yeah.
So is that max? Is that at the bottom? Is
Yeah.
that an average? So some kind of guidance around
Yeah.
how that's counted. So everybody's doing it the same way, I think.
Yeah, we can definitely
too.
incorporate that.
The plan actually say you are limited to 4 stories net.
We'll put it, it's more of a suggestion for these sites so that there's flexibility in it. We want it to be something that's adaptable over the next 10 to
Okay.
20 years. Although the graphics will show what the community wants, which sounds like from this discussion will be 4 stories. So anything beyond that would have to go through the PUD process to do so.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is that we obviously still don't know the economic feasibility of any of this.
Yes.
So that it's a
You
little
want them-
hard to lock in something that we're not sure
Yeah.
is even possible.
No, we'll make sure that these opportunity sites and how they're
Yeah.
spoken about in the comprehensive plan are flexible.
Right, other questions? All right, well, I'm sure you get some written things from at least some of us. But
Yes.
thank you very much,
Thank you.
appreciate it. And I understand the Plan Commission discussion was robust last night, so hopefully we've helped you in the next
Yeah,
phase of this.
you have. Thank you. And please pass along your comments to Dr. Peoples and we'll ensure that they make it into the first draft.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. We will take 5 minutes and then we'll come back for our regular meeting. Thank you very much. Welcome to our February 4th council meeting here in Webster Groves. We welcome all of your comments. As community members, please remember that you are limited to 3 minutes in order to complete our agenda in a reasonable time. If you'd like to speak, you can fill out a comment card that are located on the table over there. And just hand it at the end of the dais here, and I will recognize you when you come to that point. If you are on Zoom and would you like to make a public comment, when we get to that point of the agenda, if you would use the raise your hand function, we'll call on you as well after we've done the comments from in the room. We will begin as we usually do with a call of the roll.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss. Here. Councilmember Franklin.
Here.
Councilmember Smith.
Here.
Councilmember Alexander. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd. Here. Councilmember Hasselman.
Here.
All right, I don't usually make editorial comments about our proclamations, but I just want to say about our Black History Month proclamation that I am glad that once again we are doing this because it is necessary for our community and for our country to do so. There ends my soapbox, and I will read the proclamation. Whereas the observance of Black History Month calls our attention to the past struggles of African Americans and to the cultural, economic, spiritual, and political contributions and achievements of African Americans in Webster Groves and in the nation, there is a continued need to address racism and strengthen the values of diversity, equity, and inclusion in our lives. And whereas Webster Groves is home to the North Webster neighborhood, one of the oldest African American communities in the St. Louis region, with rich historical significance for educational opportunities it provided, the stability of its housing stock, and the many successful, well-known African Americans that called North Webster home. And whereas the city honors the many African Americans who have played an important role in improving the quality of life in our city, including council members, among those with us today as well, educators, administrative staff, business owners, and many others who have provided leadership through their service on city, school, and nonprofit boards and committees, including the North Webster Neighborhood Coalition. And whereas community members are encouraged to learn about the past history of African Americans in our community through the book North Webster, a photographic history of a Black community by Ann Morris and Henrietta Ambrose, and through the vignettes on the bronze sculpture called Ascension, located in Barbary Park. Whereas the city of Webster Groves is proud to honor the history of African Americans in our community and across the nation, and recognizes that we must continue to work to treat all persons with fairness, dignity, respect, and to create a world that is just and peaceful with opportunity for all. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, hereby proclaim February 2025 as Black History Month in the City of Webster Groves. Excellent, yes. All right, we have our second proclamation is Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week. And we have with us Mark and Jen Hinkle and family who have been very active in our community in supporting families who are faced with the consequences of this disease and build awareness and so forth. So I'm going to ask you to join me down here in the middle, and we will do the proclamation and you all can accept. And then council, you have to come down for a picture. Thank you. Apparently, Mike, you can stay right there. I'm gonna, yeah, why don't you just come on up here since I have to do the microphone this way for the recording. So, all right. So do you want to help? You can do the whereases. I do a lot of whereasing in my life. You want to do the whereases? Okay, so when you do the whereas and then I'll read from there. Congenital heart disease, CHD, is the most prevalent birth defect in the United States, affecting 1 in every 100 births, and has identified as the leading cause of birth defect-related deaths. And there is no known cure for CHD, as it is a lifelong disease that requires ongoing specialized care, and the health and well-being of CHD patients is of paramount importance, and it is crucial that individuals planning a family, obstetric physicians, pediatricians, and all those in the medical field have a greater understanding of the potential for CHD. And Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week provides the opportunity for patients and families affected by CHD to share their experiences and knowledge so that the general public can become aware of how this defect affects our community. You can do the now therefore too if you want. I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, acknowledge the importance of congenital heart disease awareness and encourage everyone to learn more about CHD and its effects on our friends, family, community, and do hereby proclaim February 7th through 14th, 2025, Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Week in Webster Groves, Missouri. Furthermore, the City of Webster Groves hereby proclaims Friday, February 14th as Congenital Heart Disease Awareness Day in the City of Webster Groves. All right. So why don't you can come down here maybe and I. Your sister has reads. All right, there you go. So I'm gonna just hold it like this. I'm giving to you, we'll take a picture and then council will come join us too. Oh, yeah, you're gonna be right. All right, come on, everybody. Step sort of behind you, so we can get a little bit more. So thank you all. Most of us have an idea how to cover the community, but I'm not the full community. So thank you for bringing this to council's attention and for all that you do. Thank you. All right. Bye. Give her your help anytime. We can have her read all. Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll continue with our business today and we will begin with our public hearing. And we're having a public hearing on 8045 Watson Road, Yorkshire Village Apartments, an application from Desiree McFadden for a conditional use permit to operate a banquet facility use in existing multi-tenant commercial center located on a 3.27 acre parcel in the C Commercial District. And so we will declare this open, and I believe we have a presentation from Joel, our planner. Welcome. Happy to have you here.
Yeah. All right. Well, I will try. Oh. I'll, okay, I'll try to be brief and mindful of everyone's time, but I will obviously spend as long as anyone needs on questions. Okay, so conditional use permit for 8045 Watson Road. You can go to the next slide. Just kind of an overview of what we're going to what I'm presenting is an application summary, the land use and zoning, the various comments made, CUP conditions, and then an action summary for you folks. So you can go to the next slide. So application summary. All right, so the applicant is Desiree McFadden. She will be having the business certified 20 event center. She once operated as an event space, a banquet facility at the 8045 Watson Road, as mentioned before. So you're gonna have to hear it again, I guess. 5,108 square feet within Yorkshire Shopping Center. The Plan Commission did approve this with some conditions. All right, so now kind of review of the land use and zoning. So as you can see, the pink part there, it's the commercial district. It's surrounded to the north and the east with residential. It's A4 residential. And then to the south, actually just literally just around that little section is the city of Marlborough. So yeah, I know unincorporated is like further down, but just Marlborough for that section. All right, so then going on to the current request, the applicant is seeking to have a space that can be used for various events, such as but not limited to weddings, receptions, showers, intimate parties, repasses, proposals, and holiday family gatherings. Such a use would fall under banquet facility, which is defined as a facility for hire, providing food, service, and/or entertainment. The current zoning for the property is commercial C, and the uses are governed by section 53111 and subsequently by section 53159. Under those sections of the city code, the banquet facility is a permitted use with a conditional use permit. The property was previously occupied in the past by other retail uses, most recently an MMA dojo. So there you go. If anybody's participated in the Raven dojo. All right, so moving on to then the comments, the various comments. So I sent this out to the various departments. I received, not all the departments had comments, so I only included those that did, just to save us that. So the police was the first. Parking, they had 4 kind of concerns. Parking, I sent the police at the time, it says 175 parking spaces. That's how many that are in the immediate parcel in front of it, just to kind of be conservative, but they do have an agreement to use, they can use any part of the parcel or any part of the shopping center's parking. Just that point of clarity when you see the 175. They also had a concern about the use. While the paperwork specifies the venue will host weddings and similar events, there's no guarantee that it won't escalate to high impact events. Such uses could escalate public safety demands. So a lot of that is mitigated. I'll go over with conditional use on around sound and then also the times that they're allowed to operate. So the next concern was around proximity to hot shots. Hot Shots has a lot of it's a high traffic venue, and so the close proximity presents a potential concern that you just might have spillover in terms of an event. And then noise, weddings and similar events typically involve amplified music and alcohol, which may lead to an increased noise levels and disrupt the peace. And again, that will go into one of the conditional use, the conditions in such that they have to meet the same ordinance volume levels. They don't have an increased volume permitted than any other business in that area. All right, so the Plan Commission, we went over all of the above comments as well. We also had 2 comments come in from the public. Oh, yeah, sorry, go to the next slide. Yeah, sorry, and the next one. Sorry, I didn't realize that I wasn't going for you guys. All right, Plan Commission. So Plan Commission, the kind of 3 areas that we mostly had went over was first parking. So the Plan Commission, likewise with the previous concerns, was had a concern about parking. However, there are plenty of spaces on the lot as demonstrated by the parking memo, which should be in the exhibits you guys received today. And then the building operates on a shared parking agreements across the whole plaza as part of their development when they, I think in 2008, when they revamped it. So the second was traffic. This is some of the concerns impacting the traffic surrounding residential property, using it as a cut through. And then also just the concern of having just a lot of businesses, especially if there's an event going on. However, it was determined that this would not compound any existing issues. Given that it's an event space, it's not going to be operating at 100% capacity all the time, and that most of the time events happen in the evening. So the current operational hours for this will be between 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. or and 12 a.m., which is midnight. So by 9 o'clock, most of the businesses, by 5 o'clock, some of the businesses are closed. And then by 9 o'clock, the rest of them are closed besides Hot Shots and I think one other, maybe Fuzzies. So then also, if there were any issues that would be compounded, then it would, upon complaint, go to the traffic commission, or which would then be respond and outline what next steps would best need to take place. All right, and then the concern around use with sound, operational times, and occupancy requirements, there should not be any issues with this use. All right, so kind of go over to the CUP conditions. Yeah, I just want to make sure I got that right. All right, so these are the CUP conditions that we outlined with the Plan Commission, saying that all the once we create the ordinance, then they'll have to follow this the ordinance that you guys create. If approved, and then the approved use shall be a banquet facility, the hours of operation between 10 a.m. and 12 a.m., midnight. Sorry, it's kind of broken up a little weird because the page just with number 4 being really long. So the number 4 is the maximum volume of sound noise generated. It is a lot to kind of read through and look at, but the gist is that between 10 a.m. and with Mondays through Fridays between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. local time, they cannot be above 60 decibels. And then Saturdays between the hours of 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., they can't be above 60 decibels. And between 9 a.m. and 7 p.m. on Sundays, they cannot be above 60 decibels. And then any other time outside of those windows, they can't exceed 55 decibels, which is the just normal code, regardless of what is in that location. And then number 5 is the building needs to conform to all building code. So this was something that was also pointed out just in conversation with the city architect, that they most likely have to change some of their building to meet the building code because of the event space. So the way they determine occupancy is they'll have to probably change the sprinkler system. If there isn't already a sprinkler system there, they're most likely going to have to increase the bathrooms. But that would be determined not by me because I'm not that person. But there's likely going to need to be some change to the building. And so this is just requiring them on the inside, requiring that they make sure that they meet those building codes. All right. And then number 6 is that they'll have to meet the same performance standards within the C district moving forward. And then 7, they're responsible for all trash and pickup around the property and related to their business. 8, that all C dimension regulations. So if they were to change the building on the outside at any point in time, they have to make sure they're following the C commercial district guidelines for that. And then the conditional use permit will be personal to the applicant and shall not run with the land. All right. And so then moving on to city council action summary. So we did go through this with the plan commission, but just for you guys as well, the council may approve conditional use permit should the applicant prove by a preponderance of the competent evidence that the proposed use will not substantially increase traffic or hazards or congestion. Another thing to point out is right along at that intersection, sorry, I'm looking at the map behind you, but the intersection of Watson and Laclede, which is a main strip, is not likely to cause any type of increase because it's already a high traffic area anyways. Likewise, it will not substantially increase any fire hazards because they'll have to meet any building code that's required. And then adversely affect the character of the neighborhood. They're not changing the outside of the building at all. And then not adversely affect the general welfare of the community. So they're going to still meet those noise requirements, the operational times. And then if there's any complaints, they'll have to comply with those as well. And then will not overtax public utilities. It's a commercial district and they're just another business moving in there. So it shouldn't be too much of a change. But you guys will decide that. The application for conditional use permit shall be denied if the council finds that the applicant has failed to carry its burden of proof with regard to any of the factors set forth above. And so the proposed actions would be to approve the bill as amended, or deny the bill. That's last slide.
All right. Questions?
Joel, thanks so much for doing this and welcome.
Thank you.
I just had a few questions. One, what's the do you know, I should have, the historical issues with hot shots?
I do not know that, no.
And can you, were you present at the plan commission when this went through?
Yes.
What were some of the concerns of the neighbors?
Yeah, the neighbors mostly were concerned that apparently with some of the other businesses, residents or people, or I guess patrons will park behind and there's a cut through, I guess, and will walk across, or that they will, I guess.
There's like a
I don't-
sidewalk, there's a sidewalk,
Yeah.
you know, they think of the strip mall.
Yeah.
There's an opening in the middle, which then allows for people to park sometimes on residential streets behind the actual Yorkshire shopping
And
center.
so like on Cannonberry there,
Yeah.
and then they walk through it, there's like
Yes.
Yeah, and then
Yes.
likewise, I guess if you're going, if you're driving, I guess it's sometimes faster to cut through the residential. I don't know. That's something that
Berry's
they
dead
mentioned.
end, right? Down there?
Yeah.
Do
you
you
got the wrong- It's the
Yeah.
one
Oh,
that's
okay.
the, yeah.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not as familiar with
No, you're
Webster
fine.
Groves just fully yet, so I'm getting there. But yeah, that was the two concerns that were brought up.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So one question I had was and thank you for your updated memo today. There's this, and again, I'm asking typically, and you're new with us, so it might not be a fair question, so feel free to
Yeah.
say so, but do we typically do this without a maximum occupancy, or is the maximum occupancy up to the building inspector or the fire marshal or somebody like that?
Yeah, correct. So the maximum occupancy will be determined after they get approved with their business license. Then the inspector goes out, he looks at the space, and they determine that. And with the commercial, it's also inspected by the fire marshal as well. They go out and they decide, it's actually not just determined as a space, they determine each room as how many they can hold, and then they have an overall occupancy, and it really varies depending on the use. The building commissioner told me it's like building a cake. The recipe ingredients might change, but you have to follow the instruction depending on whatever you're building.
Okay,
So.
thank you. Other questions? All right, I'm going to invite Ms. McFadden up if she'd like to come and make any comments. And if anyone has questions for her as well.
Good evening.
Hello.
Certified 20 has kind of been a dream of mine. I've been doing events for a little while, weddings, showers, and things like that. So it's been my dream just to have my own space so that I can do the kind of events that I want to do.
Yeah, move it a
Come
little closer
closer.
to you. That's great. Yeah, there you go. I think it's just a little closer to you.
Testing, testing.
Yeah, that's better. Yeah.
I was stating how Certified 20 has been a dream of mine and doing events. I've been looking for a space for a while. I have a history in banking, but I've been doing events and like party treats and things like that on the side. So now I was laid off November of 2023. So I just took that as my opportunity to focus on this dream. So it's been a long time coming. I signed the lease back in September of 24. So I've been trying to get this permit so that we can get open and I can create all these magnificent events. I understand some of the concerns about parking and noise and things like that. So as I stated to the other panel that There is a lot of parking there. And where I'm positioned in Yorkshire, I'm next to like a smoke shop, the Wing Stop, and I think I have Papa John's on the other side. So at no point in time are they packed. Papa John's doesn't even have dine-in. So if you come there, you're basically picking up or they do deliveries. So that should be an issue with parking, the same as with Wingstop. I see a lot of DoorDash, picking up orders. So they do have dine-in, but I don't see a lot of people dining in. And as far as the smoke shop, I don't even think you can like be on the premises like that. I'm not sure what their rules are, but I never see maybe more than 1 or 2 people there at a time. As far as noise, I don't anticipate it being extremely loud. However, I do plan to abide by the rules and sound ordinances. I do know that there is a residential area right behind, so I do want to be respectful with that. Trash, there is a big dumpster right outside my door. So all trash can be put there at the end of every evening. Most of my events will probably be on the weekends. Only thing I anticipate during the week is maybe a repast or something like that. And that's not late. Those are normally in the afternoon, evening hours. So I don't think anything that I'm bringing to the neighborhood is going to cause friction. I don't want to do that. But I definitely want to make this happen.
Right, thank you. Anyone have questions?
And I may have misunderstood or not, but look, there's some mention in here about, are you doing some type of reconfiguration or reconstruction inside that once that's done will actually define the occupancy, or you've done that already and you're ready to?
Right now, everything that I've done inside has been cosmetic, just paint, the floors. I haven't put up any walls or taken down any walls. I did add a kitchenette area. The space does not have a kitchen. So I did add a refrigerator, microwave, sink, countertop with cabinets underneath, and that's about it. I don't plan to do any catering. So anybody that rents the space will have to provide their own meals already prepared. You cannot cook on site. And as well as I'm not applying for a liquor license. So I will not be selling alcohol on there.
Can you bring your own alcohol?
Now, people who have a catering license, they are allowed to have alcohol, but it won't be from me.
So it's been a while since I've been on the backside of Yorkshire Plaza, and this might be a question for Joel, but don't they have like a brick, or not brick, concrete? Isn't it elevated a little bit? Deerhurst is elevated a little bit?
Yes,
Right. All right.
yes.
All right. So
Do you anticipate having live music or allowing live music? Has that been discussed? I mean, I know you've got the decibel restrictions, but just curious.
I'm not opposed to it. Again, if so, they would have to abide by the rules, the noise ordinances, but I haven't really gotten it for it. Now, in my mind, most of these events may be DJs or things like that. No live concerts, I'm not doing that. But if I host like a wedding reception and they request a band instead of a DJ for their entertainment, I'm not opposed to it.
Other questions?
This might be, and thank you very much, Ms. McFadden. A question for Joel. I'm not sure. So where does, like, people are probably going to smoke, like if they're having at a party and they're having a good time. Is there in that plaza, like, where do people who go to Hot Shots smoke? And don't tell me inside.
outside Hot Shots, the front side.
The front, okay, because yeah, and so is that the policy or that's our?
You're gonna have to come, Joel, to the microphone too, please. Thank you.
Yeah, so smoking was not something that we covered at the Plan Commission. But I would imagine it would have to be in the front of the building as well, because the back is kind of like an alleyway.
Okay.
And it's not like something you can just easily just walk around and go to the alley. And that is always something you guys can put in as an amendment as well. So.
Okay. Yeah, I was just thinking like for neighbors and stuff, if folks were hanging out in the back, that probably wouldn't be super great for them. So in the
Yeah.
front, it's facing the Cleat Station. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
So, I've been toying around with all my paperwork, contracts for leasing the space. And one of my things is there's no smoking. I'm not a fan of smoke. I will not allow people to smoke out front. You will have to go to your car. Just to keep it clean, the air clean. I'm just not a fan of smoke.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. All right, I think that's it. Thank you very much. We will move on to our public comments now. And first I have Laura Matlock. So you will come to the microphone, please, and state your name and your address, and then your 3 minutes will begin. Thank you, Laura.
I'm Laura Matlock. Can everybody hear me?
Mm-mm.
I'm Laura Matlock.
Move a little close. You can pull that down.
I'm
towards
Laura
you.
Matlock. I live at 515 Cannonberry, so I'm in the community directly behind where this center will be located. And the reason that I wanted to come tonight is, Barry Arnold, I've been working with you over a couple of years with some other South Webster residents, and we've been quite concerned about safety and cut-through traffic from Yorkshire Plaza. We've been concerned about lighting. We've not made any progress on any of those issues. And so now that we look to get a banquet center put into Yorkshire Plaza, we want to know what Webster can do for us to perhaps close the entrance that cuts out onto Coverdell Hill so that we do not get that traffic that cuts through there and usually speeds through there, quite frankly. We want to know about that. For the people who live down on Deerhurst, I mean, they have literally walkways that have stairwells that go down that people, if they want to, can park there, walk down those stairwells and be right at the back of that center. We have concerns that if the cut-through's left open, that people are going to come up into our neighborhood and they're going to park on our streets. We don't have any lighting and we don't have any sidewalks. And so that only adds to the problem for the residents, for small children, for people who want to try to walk their dogs through there. It just adds to the congestion. And it puts us in a difficult situation as neighbors that we see parked cars in an evening. Are we to assume one of our neighbors is having a legitimate party at their home? Or is it overflow parking from down in Yorkshire Plaza because there's a new banquet center down there and they choose to park there instead of parking in the designated spaces? And although I hear about the smoking policy, nobody says, well, they have to go out front to smoke. Nobody can enforce that they have to go to their cars. It's just basically, well, that's what we want people to do. So I just would ask everyone here tonight to consider, if you lived personally behind Yorkshire Plaza, if you were dealing with that traffic, if you had no lighting and you had no sidewalks and you had small children and you had dogs, what would you want the city of Webster Groves to do if they're going to approve the banquet center for the plaza?
Can I ask a question? Why?
Sure.
I understand the cut through. I think that's a fair concern on Culver Hill, and I think it's worthy of discussion. I'm confused though why they would be coming down Cannonberry.
They don't come down Cannonberry, but they come down Culver Hill, which connects with Cannonberry.
Mhm.
And so, and they basically roll through the stop sign at Cannonberry and Culver Hill.
There used to not be a stop sign there.
There is a stop sign.
There used to not be.
Okay,
for a
but
long
there
time.
is.
Yeah. and
There
so,
is.
And
And
I
they,
just,
Okay.
oh, go ahead.
oh, and I just have a few questions because I think this is an important issue. I know that we're not allowed to talk, but I think that this is a valid. So let me ask you about hot shots. Have you
Mhm.
had problems with hot shots?
I have to tell you, I can't tell you personally that I have had problems with hot shots. I know that we get the flow of traffic coming through there. We've been talking about this for a couple of years now. Like I said, Mayor Arnold was, kind enough to talk with us about the flow of traffic. Yeah.
Thank you very much,
You're
ma'am. I
welcome.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'm also going to state for the record that I spent 18 months trying to figure out who owned the actual parcel that leads out to the cut through, and tried repeatedly to get their registered agent from the state and without response. So it's not the Yorkshire Plaza people who own it's the people with the vacant bank who own it and who are unresponsive. But maybe it's time to try again.
Maybe we close it off and see if they respond to us then.
Not sure that's legal, but from where you sit, maybe not, but where we sit, yeah, sorry. All right, Joan Lurch.
Hi, my name is Joan Lurch. I live at 1229 Culver Hill Drive. I echo Laura's concern. We've been trying for many years to have something done about that back entrance because frankly, there's no reason for it. It's just a cut through from Edgar Road and the speeding down Culver Hill. And I think it's Sunningwell. And by the way, that stop sign, I got that stop sign put in because I saw a van with a toddler in it get hit and smacked and spun upside down. And after that happened, we got the stop sign. Sometimes the stop sign is helpful, most of the time it's not. The one concern I would really like to point out, besides that back entrance, and thank you, Laura, for trying to address that. One of the bullet points in the presentation said that there didn't seem to be an impact on the neighborhood. And I think that's really unrealistic to have a venue that holds, let's go with the max and say 200 people. Let's shave that in half and say 100 cars. A party that lets out at midnight with 100 cars, and you don't think that impacts us? With everybody trying to get to I-44 through our neighborhood that's pitch dark with no sidewalks? I don't think that's a realistic projection. I think for us, it's terrifying. I mean, and terrifying is not too strong a word. And as far as hotshots goes, I don't know that I've personally had any problem, but there was a murder on that parking lot. So I'm sure, obviously, everybody knows about that. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to ask that the city attorney enter our items into the record, please. Oh, I forgot to ask. Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to raise their hand online for a public comment during this public hearing? All right, then we will, Mr. City Attorney, go to you.
At the close of the public hearing, I would move for the admission of the following exhibits. Plan Commission staff report by Joel Pugh, City Manager for meeting date January 27th, 2025, and the applicable Plan Commission minutes. Number 2, the application and letter from Desira McFadden, that's a certified 20 event center. Number 3, the preliminary floor plan. Number 4, the city planner's PowerPoint before the City Council this evening, February the 4th of 2025. Number 5, the parking information memo dated February 4th, 2025. And finally, the zoning code of the City of Webster Groves. I'd move for the admission of all of those documents, please.
All right, thank you. That then closes the public hearing. Councilmember Hasselmeyer, could you call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9276, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9276.
Second.
Bill 9276, first reading. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit to Desira McFadden, Certified 20 Event Center, to allow a banquet center use on an approximately 3.28 acre tract of land in an existing structure at 8045 Watson Road in the C Commercial District and matters related thereto.
All right, is there discussion at this point?
Neil, what are our options to stop that cut through if we wanted to close it off?
Assuming that it's an easement, and that would be my general guess, it's an easement. I would check to see on a survey who it is that owns it. And if we are unable to get a hold of that individual and it's determined that it is in the public interest and the safety of the area to close it off, then we could, in theory, condemn it by putting up a gate and we could close it off. So we have the authority to close it off.
That was gonna be my question. So we can, because Laura said we've been trying to contact people, they're not being responsive. How much you know, leeway do we have once they're unresponsive when it's causing
Yeah,
concerns?
if they're unresponsive, and obviously they are in a situation like this, we would give them notice of our intent to do so, give them an opportunity to be heard. But I think the city manager would have the power to then basically say, we're closing that off.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say, using the present tense to say they have been unresponsive isn't fair because I haven't tried in over a year now. So I gave up.
Right, but we would give them notice as required under the ordinances and we can close that off.
And what is that time? You give them notice and they have 60
got-
days or 90 days?
No, it's 15 days, I think, it's relatively short period of time.
Mhm.
So again, I mean, it's one of those situations where we would have to examine it and determine that in fact, you know, it creates a problem for the neighborhood. But, you know, if there are people that are coming and going and you know, coming to the commercial center and that is for some reason creating a problem in the neighborhood, it probably would rise to the level where we could take action.
Because my thoughts of it is, I mean, it's a commercial area, so we're gonna have commercial business and traffic, but I can certainly appreciate, especially because that's an issue all over the city with people driving up and down these streets like just crazy, speeding, what have you. But if there's a way for us to cut that off, to prevent that.
Right.
You define what pulls it off.
Yeah, you'd gate it. I mean, you can't do anything other than gate it, but it comes down. I've gone through that passway. Not on my way to Hot Shots, but I've gone through that pathway.
After Margarita at Fuzzy's.
I can't remember which way I was going, but there's steps that come down because it's elevated above. So you come down the steps, not many steps, but it's
No,
a
no,
pass.
that's not what we're talking about in terms of, they're talking about car traffic at the west end.
Oh, I
of the
thought you were talking
parking
about
lot.
the pedestrian path.
No, not the
Traffic,
pedestrian
the
path.
street, blocking the street.
But it's
so that they
like
can't
overheard
drive through there.
turns and you could go into the bank when it used to be Commerce Bank and everything.
Well, it's really where you cut in is behind the bank
Yeah,
and there, between the bank and a parking lot.
I always thought it might have been.
So the problem there, you could still, in theory, block it. The problem that you're going to have there, though, is that all of those businesses are now affected by that, one way or another. And maybe they don't care, and maybe they'd say, we don't care. But I think this would be a situation where you'd have to elicit their responses to determine whether or not they think that would negatively impact their business. It's an easement, probably a roadway. I mean, I haven't looked at this, I got to figure out what those limitations are.
So may I, just for the sake of time, is it the council's will that we let the city attorney take a look at this and see what our options are? Because this discussion really is independent of the CUP, right?
Right.
That's not one of the 5 factors
That's
that we're
not.
talking about.
That's not, and I'm glad you brought it back to that because it's not a fact.
Okay.
And so what I would like to say about the CUP and the traffic is
Wait, before you do that,
okay,
we're good with letting Neil take a look at
Yes.
what our options are for closing that. Okay, sorry.
Could-
Pam.
I think it's
Could
important.
I just add
Yeah.
one addendum? Could we
No.
look at creating Culver Hill as a one-way street from out of Cannonberry onward instead? And if we can't close that, can't we just make it one way? That way they're not going into the neighborhood, they're only coming out.
And can I add to this, I just want to make sure that whatever decision we do get to, that there's no way for maps or whatever, you know, wayfinding app you're using to just cut down another residential street. Because that's what,
Okay, so how about if we postpone the rest of this discussion until we give the city attorney an opportunity to tell us what our options are?
And I'm happy to do that. I will tell you though, making it a one-way street would truly be complicated. Because you now have to engage everybody who's on that street. Now, again, that doesn't mean that they can necessarily say no, but it depends upon but again, as a matter of public safety, you have the authority, the city would have the authority to do that sort of thing, but it would have to be with notice to a whole lot of people.
Okay.
And can I suggest that with the two, because if we're asking him what to do, because first you thought we were talking about a walkway.
The pedestrian walkway.
Okay, but we're talking about the street. Can we look at both?
Sure.
Because the walkway is preventing people from coming through that pathway
Mhm.
back to the neighborhood, into the back of the neighborhood. And then the street is preventing them from using it as a thoroughfare.
Yes, I will look at making it, gating it some way or shutting it off some way. I will look at the pedestrian walkway and I will look at making that a one-way street.
All right. can we go back to the CUP now? Okay.
So I just wanted to mention that with the traffic and the fire hazard increasing, that we have the factor of substantially increasing traffic, which means more than 51%. So
Right.
if we were to look at it more closely, we would need to prove that it would be less than 51%.
Well, just out of curiosity, what evidence did you hear that the fire issues would be substantially increased?
I did not.
Okay,
I'm just
She's just
saying
bringing-
it because we use that word
Got
in
it.
those two criteria.
Okay.
And that's all I wanted to
Okay.
mention.
It's never that it's just going to increase.
It's going to,
that, yeah.
yes.
right.
Actually, I'm sorry you cannot, but I will be happy to speak to you after the meeting and we can talk about your question. So we're finished with discussion for now. So could we have our second reading, please?
You may. Bill 9276, second reading. In ordinance, granting a conditional use permit to Desiree McFadden Certified 20 Event Center to allow a banquet facility use on an approximately 3.28 acre tract of land in an existing structure at 8045 Watson Road in the C Commercial District and matters related thereto.
I think this is a wonderful proposal. I really do. And I see no reason why we as a city cannot figure out why our commercial district cannot house both a Hot Shots and an event center in this huge piece of commercial property. We're gonna figure this out because I think that your proposal sounds wonderful and there's absolutely no reason why this can't go forward. So I'm hopeful that we can figure this out.
All right, we're going to move on now to remarks from community and visitors. I have one card and that is from Mr. Dave Buck. I know. Thank you. So if you do have a question for me and you don't want to stay to the very end of the meeting, if you would just, my cell phone number's on the website, you can just give me a call tomorrow. Yep. Sorry to interrupt. We haven't started your time yet, Mr. Buck, so.
Okay.
Kids off.
Dave, do you need to warm up at all?
I'm good. First of all, on a personal note, I just want to say I miss Eric a lot. Second, what I came to talk about is the comprehensive plan. This plan does not have a 1, 3, or 5-year horizon. It has a 20-year horizon. This is to 2045. And what I would like to do is to share 3 mega trends. This is what I would do a lot of times in my own career, not the micro trends, but the mega trends. And I've talked to the Lakota group, who I love. I think they're great, but I think they're missing these 3 things. The first is a long-term vision of where we want the city to be in 2045. And I think a vision based on economic realities and trends is that the 91 municipalities in St. Louis County in 20 years from now are not going to all exist. There's going to be consolidation. There's going to be mergers. And my personal vision for Webster Groves in 20 years is that we have merged or consolidated with perhaps Kirkwood and Glendale or some cities along the inner ring, which include Maplewood, which include Afton, which include Lee. I think it's inevitable because I don't think Webster Groves can survive by itself over the next 20 years. That's one. 2, our demographic trends and changes, which Lakota Group has not touched on. We are living today in the country of an aging population. Get this statistic. By the year 2030, or by the latest 2035, older adults will outnumber youth for the first time in U.S. history. And I think that's already happening here in Webster Groves. In fact, the school district is now suffering for the first time in lower attendance, and it's not all driven by COVID. And the point is that we have a lot of elder seniors. I'm 71, and I'm telling you what, this is the reality today. You've got people that have raised their families here, who have lived a long time here, like Barb and I. We've paid our taxes. We've supported the school district. We've supported the community. But when it's time for us to become empty nesters and want to downsize, there's no place to go. And I've had 4 really good friends who grew up here, who lived here at least 25 years, who now live in Glendale, who now live in Shrewsbury, who now live in Kirkwood, because there's no room at the inn. And I know you guys spend a lot of time on affordable housing. I think this is the #1 housing priority, to take care of your current seniors. Another demographic trend is diversity. 15% of our Webster population is non-white. What's it going to be in 5 years? What's it going to be in 20 years? 20%? 30%? What are the implications of that, and how are we going to adapt? Okay. And as a senior, I would never live in a 4 or 6 story thing. Too big.
Thanks, Dave.
This year now, you're running for county.
All right, does anyone have any new business? All right, we're going to go on to our Proposition W update, and that would be our Deputy City Manager, Davis, please.
Steal away. You can have it. I'll share. Good evening. So we're going to grab a couple, yes, please, picture. So the first thing I want to share, here we go. Flew the drone today. I wanted to give you everyone a little bit of a look at, if I can grab it here. There we go. At what the site looks like currently. So this is from this afternoon about noon at the water park. Still fighting that one. At the water park. As you can see up here in this area, I'm going to make this a little bigger. Go this way. This is the competition pool. The concrete's already been completely poured for that. The floor and the walls, everything's in on that. They've got a lot of the plumbing going already. And as you can see, the 2 big excavators here, we are currently excavating. This area is the middle leisure pool. And then all these concrete circles back here are the footings for the slide towers and our multiple 4 slides that are going back there. Just a little different angle, same stuff. So you can see the excavation coming on here on the leisure pool. So the water park's coming along. It is on schedule and ready to go. We do need it to stop having snow on the ground and rain in the forecast. We are getting tight on the timeline, but right now we are still ahead of schedule, on schedule, and looking to open up on time. So, all right.
Good news. Thank you.
Bring me up and then we'll go. Thank you, ma'am. Let's see if I can make this a little bigger too. So this is on the city's website for anyone that wants to download it. There's a photo of it, which there's a lot of information on here. The photo is not real big on the website. It's as big as it can get, but right underneath that photo, you can click on it and open up the PDF so that you can scroll in and get a little bit bigger. So this is our chart of the project timeline that we've got. As you can see at the top, I've kind of started the things we've already going and pushing out into the future. Water parks on schedule. We've done a couple things in some restrooms out in the parks already. And then a lot of the other stuff is in planning with construction to start up here in 25. I will say, I'll be the first to admit that I had hoped that some of these things would already be going a little bit more. The water park has been kind of a bear to get going. It's a massive project, and as the half of all the Prop W funding that was approved, we really need to spend the time to get that one right before we started jumping into other things and, juggling and dropping balls. So, but we still are on schedule for that. Any questions on the timeline here? Anything anybody sees that they have a question on?
I have a basic question.
Yes, ma'am.
The new GRG site, is it Oxford Bend or Oxbend Park? No, I think it's Oxford Bend. Is that the correct? Okay. Just
good catch. I like Oxbend too. That was my choice. It's probably why I typed it up there. I will correct that, and it is Oxford Bend Park.
I like Old MacDonald Park, but I didn't get it real say.
Great catch. Thank you,
That
Councilwoman.
has, solar for the rec center, has that begun, that design phase begun?
So we've purchased solar for the water park. Almost did it again. The water park. There is a solar covering that's going at the back end, the western side of the competition pool. It's about 80 feet long. It's got 34 panels on top of it. And that's about $140,000 unit that's being put up there. The rest of the solar going on top of the building, we did some preliminary work on it, got some quotes and talked to a couple different companies about how much they thought we could put in and what we could do. So that is ready to go out on an RFP to actually get someone, a designer and an installer on board, but that has not gone out yet. But
Okay.
it's real close.
All right, thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
On the lighting, I can tell have a lot of LED on there, so I know we're looking at sustainability and energy savings. Are we also looking for like light pollution and, downward facing things where appropriate?
Yes. So all those lightings that are on there are, like you said, they're LED, which is much more directionally lit than, particularly on the ball fields, than the current metal halides that we have now that kind of cast out everywhere. So those LED lights are much more directional. You're always going to have a little bit of spill, but it's I'm making numbers up here, 10% of the spill versus the current lights that we have. So it'll be much more directional. If you ever drive by the Memorial Park and look at the difference between the tennis court lights and the ball field lights, you can really tell that it's brighter on the surface, but there's less spill coming off the tennis courts, which have new lights as of 2020 versus the ball field lights, which are 30 years old.
Okay, no, that's great. And then I know that on the KBC Children's Project, when they were talking about kind of light reduction, they were saying that at 10 o'clock, they'd cut the lights to 50%. Do you have the capability to do that if we wanted to do something like that?
Yes, depending on where they are. So most of those lights, the tennis courts close before that. The ball fields are typically closed before that. Occasionally they'll run till put me on the spot. Some of them may go to 11, but most times they're off at 10 o'clock too. So then you've got parking lot and the rec center and such, that those are on timers, and we can set those timers however we would like.
Thanks.
Other questions? I just have one. The performance park was the least defined when we went for Prop W. So public engagement is upcoming. Do you anticipate then coming back to council after public engagement to talk a little bit more about what that actually might be as a project, or do that before public engagement? Where do we fit in your plans?
Yes, actually, I would hope that you all would be involved in the public input, which, you were with the water park master planning process of that, part of our small group discussions, and a lot of you came to the open discussions for the public. So we will certainly have those. We need that input from the residents on what they're looking to see, but then, it is a big dollar amount that's out there, and locations is a big up in the air. So having those conversations with council is definitely will be in the works. We're still looking for that public input to happen this summer, and then, design phase through the fall and construction then in 26.
Okay, great. Thank you.
For sure, you guys I hope will certainly be involved.
All right.
One more real quick, just jump to the next page. I haven't put this one on the website yet, but for transparency, we will get it put up there. It's just the dollar amounts that we've spent to date. We've been tracking all those various projects. So as you can see in the cost to date, we're currently just under $6 million. That's going to jump tomorrow. We had to wait to make some payments from the bonds from the day we sold the bonds till we got the bonds. I may steal Mr. Donovan's thunder, but we got the bond money today. So he deposited $17 million in our bank account today. So now we can pay some more bills. that I've already spent 7 of. I'm probably going to put another 1.5 million through tomorrow. So those costs are coming in fast, but cost to date, we've paid out almost 6 million of the water park so far. Again, that hasn't been put online yet, but will be, so all of our public will be able to see that full transparency where the money's going.
The over under parentheses is good.
Yes.
That's our under budget, not overspent.
Yeah, that's under budget right now because we've got, we've contracted 11 million. We've only spent 6 million. So that's where that 6 million under
That was
budget
my other
is.
question. So it's
Yes.
contracted minus cost to date.
Yes, ma'am.
Not budget. Okay. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Well, Mr. Donovan, it's going to be your turn now. After your thunder has been stolen, our quarterly fiscal update, please.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I will need my slide presentation because I didn't bring it with me, so. Great. So this is our fiscal year 2025, second quarter budget update. So as we go through this, you will see that the numbers are as of 12/31/2024, because that would ended the second quarter. So proceed. And everyone who's online and here, you can always find information about our budget, our quarterly updates, our budget documents online. So we'll have our performance update and we'll briefly discuss the quarterly investment report tonight. Looking at the budget performance. So we have a budgeted revenue of 45. This is all funds, $45.4 million, and expenditures of 43.6, as was just discussed. A significant amount of that is for the Destination WG Prop W projects. And so we show that the actual year to date is 13 million, again, at the end of December. In terms of revenue, that jumps to, it'll be in excess of 30 million today in terms of revenue that has been received into the city for all funds, and the expenditures, as Mr. Davis just referred to, because he likes to write this. Well, I write the checks, he just spends them, spends the money. And so those will increase as well as we go forward. But so at this time, our expenditures have slightly exceeded our revenue that it was to be expected, given the need to get an early start on the water park projects. And that compares to this point last year where our revenue had exceeded our expenditures in terms of 1.4 million. I wouldn't, that on the surface may seem alarming to folks. It's has a lot to do with the projects that we've undertaken, not so much anything concerned. So general funds, where we like to put our focus. So actual, and most of the time, our revenue so far is 9.8 million against a budget of 22.5. So we're at 43.6% year to date as the end of the last quarter. And our expenditures at 9.4. So we're ahead in terms of expenditure, revenue over expenditures by 423,000. And this point last year, those numbers were actually a lot closer. So far, in terms of inside of the general fund, we've been doing well in relation to revenues as we compare them to expenditures and compared to last year at this time. This is a breakdown by classification inside of the general funds. So some of these are self-explanatory. However, as we look at them in terms of our property taxes, our sales taxes, and I'm going to stop at sales tax there because it says 36%. I want to remind everyone that we are in some cases 1 month behind in sales taxes. So the sales taxes that the state distributes back to us is 1 month behind. So we don't have a July number. Anything that we had received in July was in fact for June of 2024. So that gets pushed back into last year. So this is only showing 5 months worth of those revenues. For the county, the sales taxes collected on our behalf and distributed by the county, they are 2 months behind. This is every year that this is how this works. So they're always 2 months behind. So anything that they collected in July was actually for May. Anything they provided us in August was for June. And both of those months get pushed into last fiscal year. So that continues every year. So it's worth remembering that even though it says 36%, we pick up essentially a couple of months in when we actually get to the end of the year when it comes to sales taxes. I say that, and I also want to point out they are coming in higher than they did on a calendar year basis in 2023 compared to 2024. They have come in a little bit higher. They are not increasing much. And whereas last fiscal year, we had a great boon to our general fund with respect to the use tax, we're not going to see that boon again. And sales taxes, in my opinion, as I'm looking at it, are going to continue to level out in terms of how much money, just similar to our real estate and personal property taxes, they're going to start kind of leveling out in terms of what we're coming in. So it's going to be continued importance. We go into entering the budget season, and as we look towards the future, as to continuing to manage well the expense side of that ledger as compared to the revenues, especially when it comes to the general fund. And I just wanted to share that. There are no other really alarming numbers on there. Fines are down, which there are a lot of different ways that you can look at, but we shouldn't try to budget on people committing crimes inside of the city of Webster Groves or not parking in the right spot. So and that's what the fines are. The fines have everything to do with the municipal court as well as parking. So that's that income line. So on the expenditure side, as we look at the different classifications, as you're all well aware, personnel services, so the cost of people is the most biggest part of the general fund budget. We're currently at 42%, so that has to do with unfilled positions primarily in terms of those personnel services costing less as the year has gone through. So we just haven't spent as much as we would have anticipated through a full half of a year. As we look at that, materials and supplies, it's 27%. Don't jump for joy of that. Materials and supplies, as you all know, with continued inflationary pressures, even though those have declined, those costs continue to rise. We just haven't spent the money yet. So it's going to be coming here in the springtime. We have a lot of material and supplies purchases during the springtime. So otherwise, everything is pretty much, it's to be expected. This is overtime. I know it's a focus as we look at it every year. So it is pretty much in line of where we would have expected to be. The police department uses most of its overtime during the late summer, early fall, or actually right in the middle of summer with the different events that we have here in the city. And actually spoke to the chief today. We're going to be on target with that, he promises. And so I think everything is going to look good there and but the police and the fire department have done a good job in terms of managing their overtime during the course of the year, and both chiefs, and during our continued conversations, are well aware of that, continued need to manage that as to the best of our ability. Obviously, there are things that that are beyond our control. And also, as we look at, with respect to the police, some of that overtime money does get offset within the grant fund. So we get grant revenue. So there's some overtime that while we expend it out of the general funds, what happens is that we get money into the grant fund from the Missouri Department of Transportation. And then the grant fund sends that money over to the general fund to offset those costs. So when you have those special weekends, for instance, the Show Me Zero stuff, or it's things related to DUI enforcement and things like that, where we are actually committing officers for overtime to support those efforts on behalf of the Department of Transportation. They in turn not refund, they grant us that money in order to be able to provide that service for them. So that was it for I should pause before we go any further, pause there if you have any questions about the revenue and expense side of things as we look at it.
I think you may continue on.
Okay. Quarterly investment reports. Here's where we ended the second quarter. Total investments in cash at 27, despite Mr. Davis's spending, $27.7 million in investments in cash, 13.7 million in investments. So with the liquidity ratio, I had been deliberately, depending on the bond sale timing, had been keeping more cash on the side in terms of liquid money that we could go to, so that we could be sure that to cover both the expenses for Prop W projects as well as the city's continued expenses. And that helped us in terms of being able to provide the liquidity for those projects, as well as having this discussion with the city clerk today. You may have seen in the news, we actually did get an official notice that the St. Louis County is a wee bit behind in terms of processing property tax and real estate tax payments. In fact, they haven't completed December yet, and they are not anticipating that being done until February 15th. So we have not gotten as much income as we normally would have received by this point in time. So it turned out, in hindsight, being a pretty decent decision to have made. But the reason primarily for it was for Prop W. So you see the yield spread says 0.01. That's because one of our banks decided to short us on our money market account. I was not too pleased with that. But our highest investment right now, it's this very, very tiny amount that's at 0.01, and it's being fixed, I assure you. And we have all the way up to 5.12% in terms of yield, our average weighted yield for all of our investments. So that 13.7 million is more or less at this point invested at 4.4% interest rate. So because the funds were received today for the bond sale, those funds will repay the city in terms of what the city has already expended out of its reserves to cover those projects. And then the balance will be, we'll look at investing some of that to continue to earn interest. So the money will be paid back, and then additional monies that I had been holding as liquid will be redeployed to earn a little bit more interest, but we're still sitting in the mid fours is where we can probably get in terms of investments, at least with the treasury bills, and we haven't purchased any agencies at the city of Webster Groves. So agency bills, so different government related or adjacent agencies. So we'll look at some of that stuff and redeploy some of those so that we over a longer term period, so we can lock in some of those rates. So.
Like the majority of our maturity dates is in 2025.
They are. So I will say, and I don't, I've never been good with a crystal ball. So we're looking at, we have some limitations on what we can do with by the state anyway. However, what we were looking at was, what's the interest rate picture going to be, right? So we tried to lock in some of that stuff. We had done very well going short term, especially as they were coming up and hitting their pinnacle. So now it's the time to decide, what can we do? Councilman, it's about lengthening that out, and how much can we lock in now? So when I was actually looking at one of our traditional bank CDs, I'd locked it in at 2 years. I took a lower rate because both the bank and, everything that was coming out of the Fed and every indication in the media that there was going to be some aggressive cutting going on. It was not only November, but also December, and also again in January. That has not come to fruition. So I ended up on the wrong side of that deal, to be honest. So I ended up taking a lower interest rate for a longer period of time because we both thought that that's where the rate was going to be. So, we're going to have some higher rates for a little bit. If we got some where we can deploy some of this money for a year and a half, that's going to be the issue is, we're in a sense, the banks, the investment companies, and us as the investor, when we're limited in our scope in terms of what we can invest in, we're playing a game with each other on the interest rates and who's, how much are they willing to give us, in order to, and hedge their bets against getting caught again with paying out more than what they can earn. So that's going to be a continued challenge, and the media and all of the stuff that swirls around with the interest rates and how much news it generates, that doesn't help. So in that sense. So.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. I think that's the it. Is that it?
All right.
All right, there it is.
There's the budget. Yeah.
You're welcome. My
Appreciate it.
pleasure.
All right. Would anyone like to remove the minutes from the consent agenda? Councilwoman Alexander, would you call for the approval of the consent agenda, please?
Second. Councilmember Bliss? Yes. Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Yes. Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes. All right. I believe that brings us to the end this evening. No, it doesn't. Famous last words.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed section related to attorney-client privileged communications, Missouri statute 610.021, subsection 1, and real estate, Missouri statute 610.021, subsection 2.
Second.
Councilmember Franklin?
Yes.
Councilmember Smith?
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander? Councilmember Hickson Shepherd?
Yes.
Councilmember Hasselmeyer?
Yes.
Mayor Arnold?
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss?
Yes.
All right. That ends our meeting, our public portion of the meeting. I assume if you need to stay, you know you need to stay.